This is VSiN, the sports betting network. This is the VSiN Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Good morning, happy Tuesday, and welcome into the VSiN Morning Line. I'm Grace Remington with Michael Lombardi and Harrison Stanford, recapping all the sports action from last night and getting you ready for the week ahead. Here's what's coming up on the show today. We got a full house at 7:30 Eastern. Matt Youmans joining the show with his best bets for the week. Then at 8:30 Eastern, Nick Whalen with a fantasy football Week 6 recap and some waiver wire tips. Then at 9:30 Eastern, Jonathan Von Tobel joining the show with a preview of our new NBA betting guide posted to VSiN.com and his best bets for the upcoming week of football. Coming up in this hour, we are getting into Monday Night Football, taking a look at the NFL Week 7 injury update and a first look at some of these lines for Week 7. Matt Youmans, as I mentioned, joining the show with his best bets, and then we'll wrap the hour with fantasy studs and duds. So let's get into this Monday Night Football game. The Bills go on to beat the Jets 23-20, covering all the numbers. The total goes over 42. I mean, we got a little bit of everything in this game, Michael. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I mean, look, it was a strange game. There was a lot of penalties. There was a back and forth that you really didn't understand some of the calls that were made. And I think it really affected the flow of the game. But I think at the end of the day, the Jets are 1 for 4 in the red zone. They missed 2 field goals that hit the post, and they have no one to blame but themselves. I mean, everybody was expecting an uptick in terms of the running game, which they did. Their ability, they outgained the Bills. They were able to make the Hail Mary play at the end of the half, which was sensational. And yet they still couldn't find a way to close in the second half. They scored 3 points, and so did Buffalo, and the game closes 23-20. You know, this is one of those games where Buffalo found the way to win and the Jets didn't.
Leave it to the Jets to ruin what was a good day of New York sports. You had the Mets win earlier in the day. The Yankees got the W in their playoff game, and then the Jets somehow, some way, with the missed field goals, the red zone ineptitude, really spoiled what could have been a good day for a New York sports fan. As I look at this Jets season, though, in general, Michael, quite disappointing when you consider the fact that they had a lot of these games some of these games that they lost, they easily could have won. The Vikings game came down to a late interception. This past game came down to a late interception. If they hit one more field goal, they beat the Broncos at home, and next thing you know, they're a 4 or 5 win team. I'm curious, Michael, if you've been in a locker room before, associated with a team before, that has had some of these one possession losses really define the early beginning of their season, and how did they respond?
Well, you know, to me, this is the NFL. The NFL is a fourth quarter league. The NFL is a one-score league. The NFL is which team finds a way to win the game, which team doesn't. And the Jets easily could make the case to be 5-1, just like the other 31 teams in the league can make a case that they're better than their records. But as the great Bill Parcells said, that's what you are. You know, a play here, a play there, and they're right there. I mean, you know, they lose 10-9 to Denver. They make a field goal there. They throw a touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson against Minnesota. They win that game. And then last night, if they're not 1 for 4, forget the penalties. If they're not 1 for 4 in the red zone, you know, they're going to win that game. If Zerline doesn't hit the post twice on field goals, they win the game. So to me, that's what happens with teams all the time is you talk about, well, this could have happened. Well, you got to make it happen. You know, you got to make it happen. And the Buffalo Bills were able to make it happen. They were able to drive the ball down the field. Look, Buffalo ran the ball for 150 yards on them last night. I mean, this is supposed to be the greatest defense since the 2000 Ravens. And every team that beats them runs the ball on them, yet nobody really wants to talk about their lack of run defense. And so to me, you know, the Buffalo did exactly what they had to do. It was kind of a Kansas City Chief effort. They just functionally played well, and when the game was on the line and they needed to keep the ball away from the Jets, they had a great call to Josh Allen on a reverse sweep with the quarterback. It was wonderful. So the Jets have no one to blame but themselves.
A lot of missed opportunities for the Jets, but officiating didn't make it any easier either. And you never want to blame the officials for costing you a game, but this one kind of stands out because both sides had 11 penalties each. That's 22 penalties total in the game for over 200 penalty yards. And there could have been more because some of those penalties were offsetting at the end of the game. Aaron Rodgers was not happy with it. Here's the Jets quarterback afterwards.
Yeah, it seemed a little ridiculous. Some of them seemed really bad, including the roughing the passer on me. That's not roughing the passer. I was going to play sarcastic ball if we're going to call those things. And I thought the one on Kinlaw was not roughing the passer either. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with them. There's no consistency with the officiating at all. I mean, I thought the personal foul on the rough of the passer was a joke. I don't know what Kinlaw said to the referee to cause him to get penalties. But these guys, when you call 22 penalties in a game, the people didn't pay to watch you referee. But Aikman kept saying, well, look, that's a penalty. That's a penalty. And I think to me, sometimes they just are a little bit nitpicking on it. Like, I did not think that was a personal foul. But at the end of the day, they called it, and you got to find a way to win. It happens every year. We can sit here and complain about the officiating. It doesn't do us any good. What does us good is making field goals. What does us good is scoring when you have first and goal at the 4. And look, Tyron Smith had a tough night. The offensive line had false starts again. So it was just another situation where the Jets show up who they really are. And they are, right now, after 6 games, a team that can't win close games.
Looking at that game last night, I was not impressed by what I saw from both teams in terms of their discipline on both sides of the ball. The penalties were a bit too much, but as a fan, I'm going to tell you guys, I'll tell you, Grace, it was terrible watching that game. The last 3 minutes of that game felt like 20 minutes, and I'm saying to myself, the momentum from the game is being taken away. Granted, if they're fouls, they're fouls. If they're flags, they're flags. I guess you have to call it. But from an entertainment standpoint, man, that was boring. And I found myself even saying, if they're offsetting penalties, do we even have to bother to stop the game and call it? Like, if it's gonna end up resulting in a do-over, just give me one of these, like, circling your fingers and let's move on. It was terrible to watch that last 15, 20 minutes of the game, that's for sure. Boring watch towards the end for what was a close game. So that made it a little bit unfortunate.
Michael, this was our first game with Todd Downing now calling the plays for the Jets. And statistically, I mean, even by the eye test, it looked like Aaron Rodgers was thriving. He went 23 of 35 passes for 294 yards. The team as a whole almost passed the 400-yard mark. Breece Hall finally broke through. He had 113 yards. Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard each broke 100 receiving yards. So even though they didn't win the game, you mentioned the red zone issues. What did you think about Todd Downing's first game calling plays here?
Well, they looked much different. They motioned. They were able to get the ball out in the perimeter. They got the running game going against the Buffalo Bills defense that ranks 31st in the National Football League in yards per attempt allowed. So I kind of temper that a little bit, but they did a good job. And I think, to me, they're one receiver away. It would not surprise me if they went full scale into Davante Adams sometime today, tomorrow, trying to see if they could pull that deal off. I think that's what they probably feel like. They need to get him over the hump. They need somebody to take the pressure off Garrett Wilson. Look, Lazard was fine. He made the great play in the end zone. That's 52 yards of his production on a Hail Mary. So that's not going to happen every week, right? And I think, to me, they probably feel like they're one receiver away. But this offensive line, I mean, Rodgers got the crap beat out of him again last night. He got hit constantly, and so I think that's got to be an issue. But at least they got the running game going and their identity came back, because they only gave the ball to Allen 3 times. They gave the ball to Breece Hall 18 times, which to me, that's what it should be. I know Allen's a good player, but their best player is Breece Hall, and they need to give him the football. Look, they didn't punt in the second half. I mean, they didn't punt in the second half. They had everything going for them, but they, field goal, missed field goal, interception. They had 4 possessions in the second half, and they were able to get drives, but they couldn't close it out. They couldn't win the fourth quarter. They only had the ball for 6 minutes in the fourth quarter.
Michael, if I look at that game and I saw the New York Jets offense, it seems as if, again, Garrett Wilson was the immediate target for Aaron Rodgers, and that connection was successful and not too much outside of that. But if I'm Davante Adams, though, wouldn't I have a say in where I go? I could kind of voice my displeasure if I went to a certain place. And then if I am Davante Adams, considering the fact the Bills won last night, wouldn't they be my top contender to realistic opportunities that I would go to?
I think he wants to be reunited with his quarterback. I think he trusts Aaron. I'm sure he'd like to go to Buffalo, but I'm sure the Jets are probably going to be more all in than this. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens over the course of the next day or two that'll lead you to believe that this Davante Adams thing is moving along closer towards the Jets than any other team. Look, I think the Jets have gone all in. I mean, let's be clear. When you sign a quarterback at over 40 years old, your 2 starting tackles are over 30. This is their year. They're 2-4. You can turn this around. I mean, nobody in the East is dominating, although Buffalo has won in Miami and now they've won in New York, but they're still vulnerable. They're not a perfect team. So you could turn this thing, one win can turn this around, but you're going to have to get it all set up. I think the Dowling move certainly helped them. I do. I think the Dowling move certainly helped them. I think, to me, they're not as good as we think they are on defense, especially when they have to play the run game against good teams that know how to run the football.
You say the Jets are one receiver away. That made me think of Mike Williams. I mean, we saw it wasn't just that interception at the end of the game. Earlier in the game, he dropped the pass that was sent right to his gut, wide open. And you could see the frustration on Aaron Rodgers' face. He later said it was just miscommunication. They just haven't built up that chemistry yet. So would love to see what this team could be when he does get on the same page with those receivers, one of them possibly being Davante Adams. Okay, so the Bills move to -500 favorites to win the AFC East. We'll get into this game later on in the show, but coming up next, we're taking a look at other NFL news and some of these lines for Week 7. This is the VSiN Morning Line.
Time. There's nothing more valuable. It's what drives everyone to make the most of every moment. We celebrate living large in the now. In a city where time disappears, we create experiences that electrify the soul and memories that will last forever. We go big, we go all night, and here, everyone is invited. So get loose and get loud.
This is Circa. You'll have the time of your life.
Coming up Tuesday on Follow the Money, we recap Monday Night Football. Look ahead to Game 2 in the ALCS. Jensen Lewis on the program. Also, Jeff Davis to talk hockey from Circa. And Paul Stone college football picks. Follow the Money weekdays, 4 to 7 Eastern on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Want to see who at VSiN is on a hot streak? Go to VSiN.com/picks to see all the selections and weekly leaderboard of VSiN hosts, writers, and guests. Become a VSiN Pro subscriber and get every pick sent to your inbox daily. Just head to VSiN.com/pro.
So, Paulie, have you had a chance to read the VSiN Daily yet?
Yeah, came in at 3 a.m. What's Bill doing up that late?
Well, rumor has it starts off with a 12-hour meditation session.
Then he just pours himself over film and live TV, really focusing and taking it all in. Bill's in with the biggest insiders, talking trade secrets, strategies, the whole nine, absorbing the info.
And then and only then can the writing process begin.
In Las Vegas, Bill's Late Night becomes your early morning. Wake up to the very latest betting insights in your inbox with the VSiN Daily. Sign up for free at vsin.com/newsletter.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back into the VSiN Morning Line. These MLB playoffs keep chugging along, so let's give you a quick update here on the ALCS and the NLCS. The Mets making the NLCS tied now, bouncing back in a 7-3 win. Sean Manaea opened the game with 4 shutout innings. His final line was 5 innings pitched, 2 hits, 2 earned runs, 7 strikeouts, and 4 walks. Francisco Lindor opened the game with a homer on an 8-pitch at-bat. Then in the top of the second, Mark Vientos worked a 9-pitch at-bat and hit a grand slam 391 feet to center field. It was the Mets' second grand slam of this playoffs. So the Mets end the Los Angeles Dodgers record-tying postseason scoreless streak at 33 innings. Game 3 is Wednesday night in New York with Walker Buehler facing Luis Severino. Then the Guardians and Yankees facing off in Game 1 of the ALCS. Alex Cobb, the starter for Cleveland, ended up going 2 2/3 innings, allowing 5 hits, 3 earned runs, 3 walks with 3 strikeouts. Carlos Rodon was scoreless through 5 innings. His final line ended up being 6 innings pitched, allowing 3 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, and 9 strikeouts. In the bottom of the third, Juan Soto led off with a solo homer. Cobb ended up walking the bases loaded. He was taken out, and then rookie reliever Joey Cantillo threw a pair of run-scoring wild pitches. Giancarlo Stanton, by the way, added his 13th career postseason home run for the Yankees in the bottom of the 7th. So the Yankees go on to win 5-2, taking the series lead. Game 2 tonight is Tanner Bibee and Garrett Cole. Harrison, were you able to catch any of the baseball action? What did you think about your Yankees?
Oh, yes, indeed. I had Monday Night Football on one screen to my left. I had the Yankees game on one screen to my right. That game really came down to the third inning there for the Yankees. When Joey Cantillo came into the game and he threw those wild pitches, it just really put the distance that the Yankees needed in order to win the game. I was optimistic about their chances. I felt like they had to get that lead after the first 5, and you did get a good performance there from Carlos Rodon, the 9 strikeouts. He was throwing a lot of swinging strikes, which was a positive sign. He was definitely more calm than he was in Game 1. Or his first appearance against the Kansas City Royals. So that's a boost of confidence for the team. But Grace, it really comes down to what happens today because the Guardians can steal home field advantage. Yes, the Yankees have Garrett Cole on the mound, so they should probably feel confident about that. But at the same time, the 4 horsemen for the Cleveland Guardians, those 4 strong arms out of the bullpen, all got a day of rest. So similar just to how I felt about Game 1, that first 5, the Yankees probably would need a substantial lead in order to probably feel comfortable to win this game. They had Weaver come out last night. He had to do another 5-out save, which is a good thing for the win, maybe not a great thing for trying to get back-to-back wins. So the Yankees going to need a lot of length out of Garrett Cole tonight in order to pull this one off.
Rodon mentioned after the game that he had been studying Garrett Cole in his last start against the Royals in the DS, trying to study how he gets through those big moments and managing his emotions, and looks like it paid off for him. 9 strikeouts, just 1 earned run in last night's start. Today's game, the Guardians are a +150 underdog on the money line. New York Yankees juiced all the way up to -170 now. This total set at 7 runs. My favorite projection model gives the Guardians a 44% implied probability to win this game, which means they should be priced at +125. So we have quite an edge on the Guardians side here. Obviously no value on the Yankees side, but for the total, 7.2 runs projected in this game. It's cold weather in New York, which makes it a little bit more difficult for that ball to carry through the air. So a slight lean to the over in this one, but if you're going to play it, I would take the Guardians in some form. Let's get into these NFL Week 7 lines, though, and we'll start with a divisional matchup between the Lions and the Vikings. Minnesota, a 2-point home favorite. Michael, what are your early thoughts on this game?
Well, Minnesota coming off the bye week is going to be an interesting play because they're well rested. They've had a chance to really study Detroit, get familiar with them, and be healthy to play, because I think that's the key. When you play Detroit, they're so physical, they wear you down, and if you've had a tough opponent before, it's a good thing Dallas has the week off this week. Even though Dallas wasn't very physical in the game, Detroit beat you up. And I think that's one of the things Minnesota has gotten their advantage is they come off the bye. It's a tough place to play. The crowd noise is always difficult. Detroit's gone in there and won in the past. But, I mean, this is a game where Minnesota's got to really play as well as they have effectively in their run defense and force Jared Goff into a 40-pass game. If they can handle that, then it certainly gives them a chance. And without Hutchinson, look, the Lions need to make some kind of move to get another edge rusher. We know that. Their corners aren't going to hold up if they can't get some pressure. They're good inside at tackle with McNeil and DJ Reader, but they're going to need to get more pressure from outside. I could see them trying to make a move, whether it's for Hassan Riddick or someone else, but they're going to need to get another rusher in there.
Michael, it would seem as if going into this game, the Vikings might get off to a fast head start. This is something that they've done all year long, leading the NFL in first quarter points per game. You factor in that Kevin O'Connell has a bye week now to prepare. No Aiden Hutchinson. It would seem as if this turns into a game where the Lions might be coming from behind and maybe having to rely on maybe Jared Goff maybe more than they would want to.
Well, they're going to have to, because here's the reality. You can't run the ball in Minnesota, okay? So that's a big problem. And, Minnesota is no one tries to run the ball. They face the least amount of rushing attempts of any team in the National Football League this year. So you can't run the ball on them. And so that means you're forced to throw the football, which that's what teams have done. They're the best team in forcing interceptions all year. They create interceptions. They're able to do that. So to me, this is a kind of a Jared Goff game. You're going to have to do a good job of protecting, and you're going to have to really play good. You're going to have to throw the football effectively. They're going to have to find ways to have outside runs or some kind of runs that can keep you from making this a hard 40-pass game. And that's what Minnesota wants you to do. They get from in front. That's great. But really, they're so good at playing run defense that you're not able to get anything going, so it forces you into a situation where now you've got to play it, and then they're really good on third down. They're the fourth best third down team in football. So these numbers don't lie. I mean, they've played San Francisco, they've played Houston, they've played Green Bay. They've played good offenses. They've played the New York series too, which they won both those games, but they've played three good quarterbacks, and they've been able to do this against every one of them.
The early money coming in on Minnesota, moving this line from -1.5 to 2. They are one of two teams to be undefeated heading into Week 7. The other one is the Chiefs, who will play the 49ers in a rematch of the Super Bowl. The San Francisco Niners, a 1.5-point favorite at home. What are your early thoughts on Chiefs-Niners this weekend, Michael?
Well, the Niners have to get healthy, right? So they've got to have a bunch of guys that missed the game. They've got to get their corner situation situated. They've got to be able to really, Chadarius Ward was limited last week with questionable with a knee, so that was a problem. He's got to get healthy, and the week off certainly helps them, right? So they get healthy with that. But this is going to come down to San Francisco's got to find a way to run the football against the Chief defense that has been very good against the run, and they're going to have to make this not a 50-pass game. So that's going to be the key to the game. Can they find a way to run the football? This is the fourth best run defense in the National Football League in yards per attempt, so they're very good in that area. They force you to throw the football too, and then they're able to create turnovers when they do that. That's where they get their strength. This is a really good defense. I think this is going to be a game where Kansas City can run the football on San Francisco. San Francisco's run defense has been leaky. But we know that, with the week off, the rest of the team usually, and of course we're going to hear about it all week, is Andy Reid coming off the bye. How well his teams play off the bye, and it's a real thing. But Kyle Shanahan's team's coming off a bye too, because they had the ability to have the 10 days beating Seattle. The ultimate key to the game, though, if San Francisco doesn't fix this, they'll be in trouble all year. They're 29th in the National Football League in red zone offense. If they don't fix that off the bye and figure out how they're going to make plays in the red zone, we talk about the Jets had chances to win games. The 49ers have plenty of chances to be undefeated this year if they would have fixed their red zone problems.
Speaking of scoring in the red zone, I'm looking at the running back situation for the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, no Christian McCaffrey dating back to his injuries. But then you also had Jordan Mason have that sprained AC joint in that Thursday night football game. Is Isaac Guerrero just somebody that Kyle Shanahan can plug and play? Are they really going to miss out on potentially not having Mason and obviously missing out on not having CMC?
Well, I mean, look, this team always does a really good job at finding running backs, right? They always have done a good job at being able to the next man up and see if they can do that. But to me, that they want Mason. They say it was just a sprain. So certainly I think with the 10 days you could get back. And if they can pad it up and make sure that he's not going to have further injury, I think certainly he could play. And if he does, that will help them. But look, they're going to have to win this game, throwing the football, making plays down the field. It's hard to go 10 plays on Kansas City. They create a negative play at a drive, and it's over with for you. And then they're going to have to handle, which they didn't do in the Super Bowl, they're going to have to handle Chris Jones.
All right, so we got our game previews. Now it's time to lock in some best bets. Coming up next, Matt Humans joins the show. He's got a play on Chiefs-Niners. He's also capping some of these ranked matchups in another fun weekend of college football. His best bets coming up next on the VSiN Morning Line.
Sports betting game with VSiN's exclusive betting splits. Stay ahead with real-time market trends and track bet percentages on any matchup, then uncover the edge by comparing them to the amount of bets placed to find out where the sharp money is headed. Upgrade to VSiN Pro to access betting splits, live odds, line moves, power ratings, and in-depth game analysis. Go to VSiN.com/pro to join VSiN, the sports betting network.
This is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Put the VSiN experts to work for you this football season and start betting smarter with the VSiN Pro subscription. Sign up on a VSiN Pro annual subscription today and get your first year for only $199. Just use promo code VML. Get full access to everything we do, including our all-new NBA betting guide. Remember to use promo code VML to get your first year of VSiN Pro access for only $199. Sign up today at vsin.com/subscribe. That's vsin.com/subscribe. Welcome back to the VSiN Morning Line. Harrison Sanford, Michael Lombardi, and Grace Remington joining you as we look back at what happened at Monday Night Football and look ahead to another week of NFL football, week number 7, and also week number 8 of college football, where we're going to see another top 25 matchups. In fact, a couple of them on deck. And that's what we want to discuss next with our next guest on the Progressive Guest Line. Joining us is VSiN host Matt Youmans. Matt, thank you for joining us on this Tuesday morning. And before we get into the college football, let's stick with the pros. What did you see last night, Thursday Night Football? Aaron Rodgers and the Jets finding a way to lose the game.
Yeah, Harrison. Actually, I think the officials had some assistance in that too, and it was a huge. Aaron Rodgers said after the game, and there were bad calls both ways. Don't get me wrong, but the biggest call of the game was on the touchdown run by Braylon Allen from the 1-yard line. And Rodgers called that a phantom holding call after the game. And that's a huge setback. You're at the 1, you get pushed back to the 11. You got a kicker who blows a field goal. And pretty much that's the biggest difference in the game, I thought, right there, because the Jets were up, going up 27-20 with that touchdown run. And instead, it's called back in a hold. I've watched the replay here 3 times. I can kind of see what the official's seeing there, but there's no grab of the jersey. I don't think it's a holding call that needed to be made. So, the Jets made plenty of mistakes. But one thing that bothers me about watching the NFL right now is that the officials are micromanaging all these games, throwing way too many flags. There's like a flag on every other play. And the officials play a big role in the outcome of these games. Last night we had 22 accepted penalties for over 200 yards. There's just no flow to the game, and it's very disruptive, and it's no fun for the viewer.
Yeah, it is, and you're right, Matt. I mean, look, the reality of it is the Jets can cry about it, but their field goal kicker hit the post twice. You know, I mean, how many times have you seen a game where the field goal kicker hits the post twice and they can't get it? They're 1 for 4 in the red zone, and they couldn't cash off. So, I mean, we all complain about it. I mean, I think it's the rite of passage. Every October we complain about the officiating and how they're, Adrian Wilson's crew is too involved in the calls, which I agree with, right? I mean Adrian Hill, excuse me. I agree that his call, he was a little Scott Novak-ish last night, I think people were trying to pay to watch him do the game, but at least they were even. And one thing you want is at least they were even. So I can't complain. Let's go into the Sunday slate. Packers, Green Bay, Packers, and the Texans. Texans get Mixon back, look like a different team, although they won't have Nico Collins. What's your thoughts on this game?
Nico Collins led the NFL in receiving yards going into Week 6. He's going to be out again. Back-to-back road games for the Texans. I'm not going to make too much of their win over the Patriots on Sunday. But I do think the Packers are maybe starting to peak or at least play much better football. Jordan Love, 6 touchdown passes in the last 2 games. Packers got up 24-0 on the Cardinals last week. And I don't love this play this week. You recall when the Texans went up to Minnesota and got blown out a few weeks ago. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. This is going to be a type of game the Packers have to grind out. But I'm basically making this play early in the week on the number because the Packers are 2.5-point favorites out there, 3 at some spots, but there's plenty of 2.5s. And I'll lay less than a field goal. I'm sure you guys have talked about this trend. The NFC North teams right now are 18-4 against the spread. It's a remarkable run here. And I think with the Texans playing back-to-back road games, I'll back the Pack again this week.
Yeah, the NFC North has been awesome to watch. Potentially could get all their teams in the playoffs this year. But let's look at the Super Bowl rematch between the Chiefs and Niners. San Francisco, very short home favorite here. Pat Mahomes coming into this one off the bye week and off probably his most prolific start of the season. How do you see this game going?
Well, I think it's telling here that the books are making the 49ers 1-point home favorites. So a lot of people are going to look at this and say, what, the Chiefs as an underdog? Give me the Chiefs as an underdog. Well, I want the 49ers as a small favorite here. And I think by Sunday, you're going to see probably pick them on this game. Who knows? You might even see Chiefs -1 by Sunday. But I think the 49ers are being made the favorite here for a reason. I actually, there's been a lot made of Christian McCaffrey's injury, but Jordan Mason's done a hell of a job in his as his replacement. And I liked the Niners a lot last Thursday night in Seattle. It wasn't a pretty performance all the way around, but I also think when you look at the Chiefs right now, 5-0 team that could have easily lost 3 of those games. I know we say that a lot in the NFL because you have a lot of one-score games, but the Chiefs, I think, are really lucky 5-0 team. And the one thing you're going to be hearing a lot this week is Andy Reid's record off a bye. You're going to hear this all week about Reid off a bye and how he's money. I don't think he's going to be money in this spot. And in fact, I think the 49ers is kind of like a get-right game here for the best team in the NFC West. I like the Niners -1. I think they're a short favorite here for a reason.
Matt Humans, host of the Circa Friday Football Invitational, joining us on the VSiN Morning Line. Before we get into college football, one more question. Looking at Survivor last weekend, it was a clean slate, which felt like an anomaly, judging how things have gone so far this year. Your thoughts on where things are and where the early leans might go into week number 7?
Yeah, not too surprised it worked out that way in week 6 because I thought the Eagles were going to be the safest play on the board. And of course, when they get a 57-yard field goal attempt blocked in return for a touchdown, all of a sudden those Philadelphia backers had to sweat that one out. But, you go into week 7, I think the Bills are going to be a popular play for whoever's got the Bills left on the card. Maybe even the Commanders as home favorites against the Carolina Panthers. But, I'm still bitter at the Bengals. They knocked me out in week 3, and that was very disappointing. So we're down to, 215 entries, I think, with 14 million up for grabs. It's going to get a little bit tougher. It's going to get a lot tighter right now, but not too surprised that week 6, you had road favorites who were 8-0 against the spread. When you have a week like that, it's going to be good for Survivor, and it's going to be bad for the sports books.
Yeah, no question. A line that I'm surprised, Georgia's getting 4 points at Texas. Matt, I mean, I think, I thought 3 might be the number, but once it went outside the field goal, it seems a little high. Are you on Georgia?
Just like last week when we talked about the Ohio State-Oregon game, and I thought Ohio State probably should have been a 1.5-point favorite, maybe 2. You could even make an argument for 2.5, but not 3, and definitely not crossing that number from 3.5 to 4 like Ohio State was a road favorite at Oregon last week, and I was on the Ducks. And that was the right side. And here I think Georgia's going to be the right side. DraftKings has moved to 4 on this. I see a couple other 4s out there as well. I made this number 2.5. I think Texas should be fewer than a field goal favorite here. I know the Texas defensive numbers are impressive. Longhorns have allowed 13 points or fewer in all 6 games. But if you look at the competition, pretty weak offenses, really weak offenses on the Texas schedule. Colorado State, Michigan, UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma had a decimated receiving core, and Oklahoma's offense had no shot last week. I thought Quinn Ewers was a little rusty first month back from the oblique injury against Oklahoma. Carson Beck went out and threw for 459 and 3 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks last week. But again, you give me Georgia as an underdog. This is an offer I can't refuse, Michael. I'm not going to say it's the Godfather offer, but Georgia is an underdog for the first time since September 2021. 49 consecutive games Georgia's been favored, and now you're going to make the Bulldogs 4-point dogs at Texas? I'll take the 4.
Wow, that is a wild stat. One I'm sure we'll hear a lot of this week. Another game to get to here, Matt, Louisville, Miami. This is the game I had circled on the Canes schedule as their most difficult game this season when I was capping them in the futures markets. little did we know they'd have to pull out miracles in back-to-back games. Do you think this is the game where luck finally catches up to the Canes?
That's a good question, Grace. What do you think? Do you like Louisville here because you circled it before the season? Do you still like the Cardinals catching 4.5?
I've been a little disappointed in Louisville's play. So, I mean, the thing is, oh man, no, I gotta back Miami because I do have their season win total. So I need them to keep pulling out these wins here. Although if they lose this one, I'm still in a good spot.
No, you're still in a good spot. I think this is a game the Canes are going to drop too. And they're still going to be a playoff team most likely, even if they drop this game. I'm going to go with big game Jeff Brom. You remember what the Cardinals did at home to Notre Dame a year ago? Tyler Shuck, the quarterback's been playing well. I'm playing the home dog here, taking the Cardinals in the fourth.
Pat, thank you for your time and all your insight, my friend. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Okay, you bet. Thanks.
All right, coming up next, we dig into the world of fantasy football and advice for week number 7. Studs and duds with myself and Michael Lombardi after the break.
In the heart of downtown Las Vegas, a sports oasis awaits. Stadium Swim, the ultimate outdoor amphitheater, built for the ultimate sports fan, with a colossal screen that brings the game closer than ever. Reserve a daybed, private cabana, or lounge in the center of it all. 6 pools to dive into as the game heats up. And the best part, there's never an off-season. Open 365 days a year. Stadium Swim, it's always spectator season.
Wake up with Michael Lombardi, Grace Remington, and Harrison Samford on the VSiN Morning Line.
I will say this. I told Brian Daboll the minute he went there, you got to get a quarterback. I don't know one thing that Jacksonville does well, and so I'm not going to make a bet with a team that doesn't do anything well.
They'll cover all the top scores and stories from the night before, keep you up to date on the news impacting betting lines, plus give you their picks for the upcoming action. The VSiN Morning Line, weekdays at 7 a.m. Eastern, right here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
You're watching the VSiN Morning Line right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the VSiN Morning Line. Harrison Sanford, joined by Michael Lombardi in this segment as we get you guys ready for another week of football, this time for your fantasy football teams. Time to investigate what happened in week number 6 and how we can make our teams better, not just for this upcoming week, but for the remainder of the season. And part of doing that is scouring the waiver wire and finding players who performed well either last week or maybe recently and maybe putting them on your team. So let's get to some waiver wire additions before we point out some studs and duds, Michael. And first, I want to start with the running back position. You have a trio of players at that spot who are backups going into the season. In some case, the backup to the backup, and performed very well. Isaac Guerrero, 99 yards, backing up Jordan Mason after he left that game on Thursday Night Football with the shoulder injury. He could have had a touchdown, but he slid right before he got to the end zone. I think that was to save the clock, or to run out the clock rather yet. Tyrone Tracy, backup running back for the New York Giants. 17 rushes, 50 yards. We don't know the status of Devin Singletary going into this upcoming week. And then you had from last night, Michael, very impressive performance. The handcuff for James Cook. Ray Davis, 20 rushing yards, 97 rushing, 20 rushes, 97 rushing yards, 3 receptions, 55 yards. Which one of those 3 running backs would you say has more long-term value?
I think Tracy from the Giants, he looks really good. He gives them some spark. He's a nickel runner. He's not a big guy. Was a receiver in college before he moved to running back his last year at Purdue. So he's got some real skills. To me, the other 2 are always going to be backups. I think they want to get the ball to Cook. That's going to be paramount in what they want to do offensively. So they definitely want to get the ball to him. So that kind of limits how much Davis will play. And, the other, Isaac, to me, he's the 3rd string running back on that team when McCaffrey comes back and then Mason. So it's just a weak proposition if you go with him, whereas I think Tracy can have a role within this Giant offense.
In the short term, you do have the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the 49ers. And we mentioned the Jordan Mason shoulder injury. We don't believe Christian McCaffrey will be coming back this week. What is your read on how it plays out this upcoming weekend? Could Isaac Guerrero get 12 to 15 carries? Can you still expect Mason, if he plays, to get his normal workload? How do you think that plays out?
Well, I think definitely if Mason's healthy and he's cleared to play, they're going to give him his normal workload. But you know that you're going to need the other back to be ready to go. Look, it's hard to run the ball in the Chiefs, but one thing Kyle Shanahan always does is even if it's hard to run the ball, he finds a way to run the football. I think that's the beautiful thing about taking a player from Kyle's offense in fantasy is, most coaches get stymied, whereas I don't think Kyle's going to get stymied. So, I think if Mason's cleared, and we'll know that on Thursday, he's the right play here. But you got to be prepared to go with Isaac because if he's ready to go, if Mason's not ready to go, Isaac's going to be the guy in there.
Let's go to the wide receiver position. And this past week, Christian Watson, coming back from injury, was able to get in the end zone. He only had 4 targets, but 3 receptions, 68 yards, and a touchdown. And I look at that wide receiver room, Michael, between Wicks and Dobbs and Watson and Reed, and then you still have Kraft at the tight end position. Can you tell me what the pecking order really is for that wide receiver room for the Green Bay Packers?
I think a lot of it depends on the matchup on who they're playing. Now, Wicks is hurt, so we won't see him. But to me, if they think they have an advantage on the slot corner, then it might be Reed's game. If they think they can win vertically with Watson outside, then they're going to throw it there. And then Dobbs, to me, he made 2 great plays in that game. My Lord, he was sensational. And all these guys, both Reed and Watson are second-round picks. Dobbs is a fourth-round pick. Wicks is a fifth-round pick. They've got 4 legitimate receivers that were not drafted in the top 5. That's a shocker. I don't know how they pulled that off. It's amazing. I don't know how they could have done that. But to me, I think this is all game plan specific based on the opponent, and they really like Tucker Kraft. At first they didn't, but now they really have warmed up to him, and he's really become a vital part of their offense. Look, the one thing about the Packers is whatever you think of them, they can pass protect with their offensive line. Whether it's Walker at left tackle, whether it's Tom at right tackle, they're pretty good at protecting, and that's why Love is so good at getting the ball down the field. It's an impressive offense. It really is.
Yeah, it does feel like maybe Jordan Love is probably the most prized asset in that Green Bay Packers offense from a fantasy football perspective, because you can count on him. Which receiver you count on a weekly basis, as you're pointing out, Michael, could be a weekly thing depending upon the matchup. One more waiver-related question for you before we get to the studs and duds. Looking at Caleb Williams this past weekend, 226 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. He was able to use his feet as a rusher. You had Cole Kmet, 5 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 70 yards. Are you buying into this Chicago Bears offense in the long term, or is this just take advantage of the quality of opponent during this stretch of time?
Well, I think it's going to get harder. There's no question. When they play against Green Bay's front or Detroit's front or Minnesota's front, Caleb is going to struggle. There's no question. I mean, this offensive line still isn't very good for the Bears. They've managed their way through it. It was early. There was problems early in that game. The Jacksonville Jaguars got called for a couple defensive holdings in that game, which really changed the course of the game, especially from hitting him. I'm not sure they were holding calls, but you can make that case, but they were called nonetheless. I think the schedule, as it gets tougher, I think a lot of the things you want to do if you have Caleb is based on who's the front, because the weakness of this Bear team is their offensive line. There's no getting around it. Like, they've got 4 wins. It's great. I think their opponents are 4-18 of who they've beaten. It's not their fault, right? They've won the games they needed to win. But the reality of it is when they play against good fronts, it's going to be a problem for Caleb.
All right, let's go over to some fantasy studs and duds. We already talked about Garrett Wilson from last night. He's a target hog for this New York Jets offense as it presently stands. 8 receptions, 107 yards, and a touchdown. But I wanted to focus in on another stud performance. This is coming from Chris Godwin. 11 receptions, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Michael, I think a lot of people in fantasy football, if they were going into the season, thought it was Mike Evans and then Chris Godwin. But now we have more than a handful of games to see a sample size that maybe it is Chris Godwin who is Baker Mayfield's preferred target going forward for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. Are you buying in on Chris Godwin sustaining his high level of performance for the remainder of the season?
Yeah, I mean, he's always been a guy that, Mike Evans is the home run hitter. Chris Godwin's the doubles hitter. He's always going to make plays in this offense. They've got good connectivity, and I think he's constantly going to be able to make plays and be involved in what they do. And this offense, now that they found a running game, I think it really makes it easier for these receivers to get some separation, to make more plays down the field, because you're going to have to defend the box. The last 2 years, they finished 32nd in the league in rushing. It's been all passing. And I think ultimately now they've got the ability to run the football.
Let's go to some running backs real quick. Bijan Robinson, 15 carries, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. His backup, Tyler Algier, 18 carries, 105 yards, and a touchdown as well. Does Tyler Algier have long-term standing value with this Falcons running back room, or was this just a blip because of the Carolina Panthers and their porous defense?
Oh, he has long-term value. I mean, he's a better zone runner than Bijan is. There's no question. He can run the zone play really well. He does a great job of that, and he's hard to tackle. He's got a low center of gravity. He's really a good player, and I think ultimately that's going to continue, and they're going to need to use – look, every team needs 2 backs, and I think Bijan's better in the passing game than Algier, but Algier is really good in terms of outside running. He really is, which is one of the reasons why everybody was surprised that they drafted Bijan as high and passed on a defensive lineman.
Yep, that definitely makes sense considering what we're seeing from Algier. If you have Robinson, might make sense, too, to trade for Algier in the event of injury and if you don't anticipate him playing all 17 games. All right, let's go quickly through some dud performances. I don't want to bemoan Calvin Ridley's 8-target, 0-reception performance. We'll move past that. But how about James Conner? Going against the Green Bay Packers defense that has traditionally been seen as a running funnel defense, 7 rushes, 24 yards, quite the disappointment for an RB1 for many fantasy football rosters.
Yeah, well, I think to me, a lot of this goes to how you defend Kyler Murray. I mean, I think Connor is predicated on that. Now, look, he's got to be able, to run the ball. This Arizona offensive line is not very good. I think that's a big issue, too, in terms of running. But in terms of the pass receptions, I mean, Green Bay did a really good job of keeping Kyler Murray in the pocket, and they were not letting him get out and make those loose plays or move around. I think they were really good at being able to understand how you have to defend him.
We appreciate all of your fantasy football insight there, Michael. Another person that I noted out at the running back position as well, Saquon Barkley, 18 rush attempts and only 47 yards. Quite a peculiar performance going against those Cleveland Browns. We'll discuss much more fantasy football in the next hour when Nick Whalen comes and joins us. And we're also going to continue to dive into some more NFL news items, including Kevin Stefanski still backing Deshaun Watson. Why, oh why? We break that down next. This is the VSiN Morning Line.
The only thing better than football is the excitement